here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new style, and new topics every day.
We are News Generations.
Making news just for you. It's January 11th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yeun, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Cheska Dainhang.
Happy Thursday, everyone.
Happy Thursday, and Im Sang-yeok.
Thanks for having me again.
All right, now both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Global temperatures are climbing up. That's why over the States, the country saw the 5th warmest year on record in 2023, leading to 28 separate billion-dollar weather disasters. This is the highest number for disasters requiring more than $1 billion for restoration. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the U.S. witnessed severe damage from 17 severe weather or hail events, 4 floods, and 2 tropical cyclones, Hurricane Idalia in Florida and Typhoon Mawar in Guam. The total cost for the 28 large-scale disasters was at $92.9 billion. And around 800,000 Korean men born in the 1980s to 90s might have it tough finding a spouse here in Korea. That has to do with a record gender ratio imbalance during this time. Normally, statisticians would consider a balanced gender ratio at birth to be 105 to 7 boys per 100 girls, given that women end up living longer than men. But in 1985, the ratio of boys in Korea increased to 110 for every 100 girls. In 1990, it went even higher to 115 boys. And a sociology professor at Texas A&M University recently published an article on these stats, pointing to how this gender imbalance has been driven by Korea's long-standing cultural preference for sons and its declining fertility rates. And last but not least, South Korea's parliament on Tuesday passed a landmark ban on the production and sale of dog meat. The parliament approved a new bill banning the slaughter, breeding, and sales of dog meat for human consumption from the year 2027. This means anyone distributing or selling food products made from dogs will be punished by up to 3 years in prison or fined up to $23,000. Customers, on the other hand, who consume dog meat or related products won't be subject to punishment. The bill received rare bipartisan support even across the country's polarized political landscape. And this highlights how attitudes towards eating dog, a controversial yet traditional practice in the nation, have rapidly changed amid Korea's industrialization. And like many other parts of the world, including mainly Asia, like Vietnam and southern China, South Korea started consuming dog meat because there wasn't any other affordable, readily available source of protein. People also thought dog meat could help beat the heat during the summer. And the number of dog meat consumers has declined dramatically as society became urbanized and more Koreans started owning their own pet dogs. Nevertheless, according to the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Affairs, there are around 1,100 dog farms operating for food purposes in South Korea. Around 500,000 dogs are raised on them. And here in the studio, though we've been seeing this tradition, it has been declining, but for the first time ever, the parliament has passed a bill to regulate and ban this tradition. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I think the reason why so many animal activists and people are enraged with about this dog farm is not the fact that people consume dog meat, but it's just the fact that these dog farms have harsh conditions when it comes to raising the dogs. So from what I've heard, the conditions for dogs is really harsh in these farms, and also these dogs are exposed to potential disease and other harassments from those people who are raising the dogs in the farms. So just like you mentioned, as more and more people are raising dogs for pets, I think the consumption of dog meat will dwindle in the future, and as the time passes on. But still, I think the ministry and the animal activist groups should keep a close watch on these dog farms and should regulate any unnecessary harassment or violence for these dogs and for the sake of the animal rights.
Right, for sure. Even though this bill will probably take effect in 2027, we never know what type of malpractices might happen in between. Absolutely. And what about you, Cheska?
You know, while I do not consume dog meat and probably would never, I'm a little inquisitive as to why the law has come into place, and let me explain. When we talk about animal rights, I think it should cover all animals we consume, including livestock and cattle. So if the living condition of these animals are the main concern for the law, I believe the law should expand to cover all aspects of the animals, not just particularly dogs. Now, as for completely banning the consumption of certain meats, I also believe this is a sectionalized ban and could infringe upon the rights of some people to choose what to eat.
Right.
And I believe law is very, very important because it has to be meticulous, logical, and also not emotional. So while I love dogs, and again, I would never consume them, I think these are some of the aspects that we should think about when we put law in place.
That is a very valid point. I think a lot of animal rights activists are also raising questions to that as well. Why are we now just making laws only on dog meat? Because there's so many practices when it comes to other livestock as
Exactly.
well. So that's why we hope to see better regulations when it comes to animal rights as a whole. But now let's switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day. Yesterday, we talked about how South Korea is home to the world's lowest birth rates, and today we're going to cover a closely related looming demographic crisis. And that's how our society is heading into a super-aged society. And that's when 1 out of 5 people are all seniors aged 65 and up. So Cheska, why don't you walk us through on when exactly South Korea is expected to become a super-aged society?
And as you may know, we've covered this topic multiple times here on NewsGen because it is extremely important. The timing, of course, can vary. However, there is no doubt that due to the low birth rate and advances in health technology, there will be a greater senior population in the future. Now let's take a look at the screen to see the estimated figures. Now, according to Statistics Korea last year, in just about 2 years, the senior population will make up about 1/5 of our entire population. So let's say there's a 5 group of friends with us right now, one of them will definitely be a senior.
Yeah.
A society that will thus be defined as a super-aged society. And with this projection, in about 50 years, half of the country could be that of a senior population. Now, in 50 years, all of us here at the studio, and probably those watching, will fall into this category.
Exactly. So most of our people in the society would turn into seniors, which is inevitable. Everyone
Very
does
natural.
age. And that's why an aging society isn't only confined here to Korea. There's so many aging societies around the world, right?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely a global trend, but it's especially standing out here in East Asia. So if a society enters into an aging society, it means that there will be more population in need for government care. So Japan, which is the neighboring country of Korea, has already entered into the super-aged society. And when I was in Tokyo several weeks ago, what I noticed was that there were many elderly people and senior citizens walking around in subway, parks, and big department stores. And I think this reflects the future of Korea maybe like 5 to 10 years later, because as you know, Korea always follows the footsteps of Japan.
Exactly. I think our demographics has so many commonalities, and that's why we use Japan society as precursor to expect what we can see in a few years' time. And we also asked our viewers to share any issues or social problems that have to do with an aging population in their own country. Here's what 3 of them had to say. Take a look at the screen. Tara's Bell said elder abuse and nursing elderly care facilities has been unfortunately becoming increasingly prevalent across the U.S. It's absolutely horrific and heartbreaking. Tasmia said many people are not trained properly to take care of elderly people, and some people even abandon their elderly families right away after they get their property. MIMS said being on a fixed income such as Social Security can be difficult for the elderly. And this is exactly the issues that we're going to be covering today in our episode. Not only is an aging society inevitable, but there seems to be a lot of societal issues related to this demographic issue. So why don't we speak on behalf of millennials and Gen Z that might seem to think that this is way down the road, but I do think it is a critical assignment that we need to be thinking of in advance. So on behalf of young adults here in Korea, how are we perceiving senior-related issues?
You know, it's a great point that you make because, like I mentioned, in 50 years, all of us at the studio and the ones watching will be a part of a society that half of the population will be seniors and elderly. So one of the things I'm most concerned about are the new or increase of social issues that are related to seniors.
Right.
I walked into Subway, the sandwich store, which I love, a few weeks ago and saw that they installed a kiosk. And as some of you may know, Subway can be already confusing because you have to order every single step of the way. And I was a bit confused at the kiosk, and then I saw an elderly man standing next to me completely and desperately trying to figure out how to operate the machine. And this is just a very very small example. My grandmother still doesn't know how to use Kakao Cab. There's a news article about seniors not being able to get any concert tickets or baseball tickets.
Right.
And mobile banking is just impossible for some of those people who can't get through the security checks. Now, I'm usually the more positive one here, but our society really needs to act now on educating the elderly, creating services, and especially jobs, because as greater population becomes seniors, they will actually constitute a great portion of a workforce in our society. We're still battling with, as we discussed in News Gen, senior poverty, unemployment, free rides on public transits, all of which need to be addressed right now so that when we become seniors, we can advance the society in a better way.
And I think that the younger generation needs to understand that we actually have a lot of commonalities with the senior population. Back when I was doing a reporter as a features team reporter, I had the opportunity to talk to different senior citizens. And what really interested me was they said they still feel like as if they're in their early 20s. So even though they might be physically aging, their mental state of mind still wants happiness, still wants leisure time, happiness with friends, the feeling of productivity, whether that be at the workplace or independence, feeling as if they're needed in society. I think those are aspects that we can really relate to, regardless of age. Sang-hyuk, would you like to add on how Gen MZers are viewing senior-related
So like
issues?
you mentioned, the elderly obviously are desperately finding for their place in the society. So I think with the increase of the number of the elderly, there will be also some side effects rising to the surface within our society. So like you mentioned, there will be issues of the elderly feeling isolation, depression, and severe pressure from the surroundings, and this will obviously be a burden for many millennials and Gen Zs, because they will be the ones who will have to pay the tax for the pensions of these elderly, and also the pension for ourselves will be depleted in the future as more and more amount of payment will go for the infrastructure of the elderly, and which will also lead to like generational conflict between the Gen Zs and the elderly.
Exactly. You mentioned pension payment. I think that's another reason why our generation needs to be paying to this issue now. And that's why we're going to include another Gen Z in our talks. But this Gen Z will be speaking on behalf of young adults living in Taiwan, which is also seeing a rapidly aging society. Let's now talk to Sayu Wu, a Gen Z living in Taiwan, which is also seeing a rapidly aging society. Welcome, Sayu.
Hello.
All right, like Korea, I hear that Taiwan is seeing a rapidly aging senior population. So what exactly is the proportion of seniors like in your country?
In Taiwan, the older generation is growing really fast. Over the past 20 years, the number of elderly people aged 65 and above has doubled, reaching 4,276,000 in 2023. And according to figures, the average life expectancy for men is about 76 years and women for 83 years in 2022. And it is expected that by 2025, it will surpass 20%, making Taiwan a super-aged society. And this means that there will be more elderly individuals than ever before.
You know, our program tries to hear from all parts of the world, so let me ask you, how strong is the senior welfare in your country, and do you see yourself becoming a senior in your country?
Yes, I can see myself in my country, mostly because Taiwan owns a comprehensive health insurance system, and our national health insurance is a mandatory insurance system for all of the people in Taiwan, and it covers essential medical services like visiting clinics, hospitalization, dental care, traditional Chinese medicine, and prescription medications. So when seeking medical care, people only need to pay a fixed copayment, which isn't much. And the remaining medical expenses are covered by the health insurance system. And this can ensure that people can receive comprehensive healthcare without worrying about the costs.
Okay, so then what type of issues do you think your society is seeing with an aging population?
There are some social problems like the generation gap. Taiwan faces a growing generation gap between the elderly and the younger population, leading to differences in values, lifestyles, and perspectives. And healthcare demand is a serious issue now. Aging populations typically have higher healthcare needs, leading to increased demand for healthcare services and resources. Also, Taiwan is facing a serious aging issue because we're facing shortages of labor force due to our low birth rate.
And I think those are main agendas that you guys would be covering soon with your upcoming elections. But apart from voting out there, what do you think would be the best solution to solving senior welfare or senior-related problems in an aging society like Taiwan?
Yeah, like in Taiwan, to deal with the generation gap, I think we can implement intergenerational programs and activities to foster understanding and connection between different age groups. Initiatives such as mentorship programs, community events, and educational campaigns can help bridge the generation gap. And for the healthcare demands, we can invest in healthcare infrastructure and services tailored to the elderly population, promote preventive healthcare measures, home care options, and maybe community health programs to address the specific needs of the aging population. And for the shortage of labor populations, I believe we should encourage childbirth policies, childcare subsidizes, and establishment of nurseries.
So we'll have to see better policies come forth. Thank you so much, Sayu. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And before we go on to the end of our discussion, Sayu made a lot of great points, and I found a lot of commonalities between Taiwan society with Korea's.
Yes.
Which of her answers stood out to you the most?
I think the part about where the Taiwan have this comprehensive healthcare system, I think is going to be absolutely crucial for an aging society. As we have discussed here in NewsGen, a lot of people are choosing to live single and not have children once even they're married. That means a lot of responsibility falls on us to take care of ourselves, and health is an absolute priority.
It is.
And on top of that, I do hope that we implement employment system where as we age, we're still a vibrant workforce in society, because let's face it, I still want to work and I still want to be independent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would change even though you age, because it's not like Cheska being 80 would be different with Cheska being your age right now, right? You're the same being. And Youth Generation is all about representing and speaking on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. That's why to some, today's topic on a quickly aging population may seem irrelevant or even unrelatable, given that we're all still very young. But there's no doubt that we will all grow old and age. That's why I think we need to be better prepared to better solve problems related to an aging population in advance. And I would like to ask your opinions as to what type of preparatory measures we should be taking in advance.
You know, definitely health and education, I think, are two priorities. When it comes to living a fulfilled life, I think independence, as we mentioned, is very, very important. And as seniors, a lot of those independence are being forced and taken away from us, you know, starting with the driver's license topic that we discussed here on NewsGen. So one of the things that the government could do, and we could also do, is making policies that ensures that we still have the independence as we age, whether they can be on education, employment, or having the health benefits that allow us to really enjoy the society to the fullest.
Exactly. What about you, Sang-yeon?
So aside from the government's efforts, I think we Gen Zs can also do something that we can be prepared for the future. So I think this is the time where we have to be responsible on our own. So why don't we go out and do some exercise for our health and also save some money for this month. Although I'm the one who's having trouble paying the credit card bills, but still, I think we should move away from the YOLO life that we always pursued and be more responsible for your life and look for for maybe another career after our retirement. That would
Exactly.
be one potential solution, right?
I think you mentioned a really good point there. Though we had our YOLO moments where we only think we're going to live once. We live the day like a really firebug, just like putting it up all to the buzz. But now I think a lot of Gen Zs and millennials are realizing that we need to live katsing kitsing. We mentioned that on Tuesday. A life based on self-productivity, because life is like a marathon. You have to save up till, you know, and now that health benefits are so well done, the infrastructure is good, we're going to be living a long prosperous life. But in order for us to do that, it all comes down to not being YOLO. It all comes down to productivity.
And may I just add the comment about Sang-yeok being so honest about his credit card bills and having to just go out and exercise. That was the most MZ comment that you could possibly make.
I know. And one more thing that I would like to add is based on our perspective, I hope today's episode really shaken up your minds as to realizing that talking about senior welfare or an aging population isn't a distant topic for our generation. Because number one, we are all going to become old. But number two, there's so many things to relate upon. I don't think that we need a generational gap just between age. It's more of human to human stories.
Absolutely.
There's the difference there. I don't think age makes that difference. So hopefully our discussion today made you better understand that there's so many commonalities and we need to keep fueling our efforts and concentration for this topic. But in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Jessica Dainong
Pleasure's always mine. Thank
and
you.
Im Sang-yeok.
Thank you as always.
All right, and thank you ever for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.